Hello there. In the UK, consumer prices rose to their highest rate in 40 years in September. The inflation rate climbed to 10.1%. Inflation also hit a record high in the Eurozone, though. In September, consumer prices rose by 10.1% compared to the same month last year, as the ONS Statistics Office announced on Wednesday in London. In the previous month, inflation fell to 9.9% after already reaching 10.1% in July. Inflation of 10.1% is the highest level since records began in 1997. And according to a back calculation by the ONS, inflation was last higher in 1982. That means 40 years ago. The Statistics Office explained the increase in inflation in September primarily with rising food prices, which could have been prevented without Brexit. For some time now, the British Central Bank has been fighting the sharp rise in prices by raising interest rates. It has raised its key interest rate several times since the end of last year, and most recently to 2.25%. But this puts increasing pressure on the Bank of England to raise interest rates further. However, the turbulence surrounding the government of the still new Prime Minister Liz Truss even forced the central bank to intervene in the market, which increased the money supply and thus tended to increase inflation. So government and central bank were working against each other, with the central bank on the good side. Along with energy, food and non-alcoholic beverage prices were a strong driver of inflation in September. They increased by 14.5% compared to the same month of the previous year, and thus more than at any time since the April 1980. Today's release underscores the risk that underlying inflation will remain strong even as the economy weakens, said economist Paul Dales of the consultancy Capital Economics. The British Central Bank is trying to break the wave of inflation in Great Britain by raising interest rates. As a further tightening measure, the Bank of England is also planning to start actively reducing its government bond holdings, which currently total £838 billion. Initially, October 6th was set as the starting date for the sale of bonds before the turbulence on the market thwarted the monetary authority's plans. The central bank had to stabilize the situation on the market with temporary emergency purchases of bonds. And previously, Prime Minister Liz Truss' economic and tax plans had led to a dramatic loss of confidence among investors, who had doubts about the viability of the debt-financed financial plans initially considered. Truss has admitted mistakes in her economic concept, but is sticking to her position. And those who did not support Liz Truss in an important vote must now expect disciplinary measures. Well, the Prime Minister's time could end this week. British Prime Minister Liz Truss, who has come under quite heavy pressure, has threatened opponents in her Conservative Party's parliamentary group with disciplinary action. The government said on Thursday the group leadership would speak to Tory MPs who did not support the government in Wednesday's vote. Those who did not have a reasonable excuse for doing so would face appropriate disciplinary action. In this way, Truss wants to bring calm back to her group after chaotic scenes and scuffles broke out among MPs in a vote on fracking on Wednesday, in which it was not clear whether it was also a vote of confidence. Despite the dissenters, the government won the vote still. Transport Secretary Anne-Marie Trevelyan told the BBC she was shocked by reports that Tory MPs had been harassed to force them to vote with the government. But Truss has the confidence of the cabinet, she says. When asked if Truss would lead the Conservatives in the next general election, she told Times Radio, "I think that's still the case at the moment." And on Wednesday, Home Secretary Suella Braverman announced her resignation and also criticized Truss. According to media reports, Truss may face a no-confidence vote from her faction later this week. She had only succeeded Boris Johnson about 6 weeks ago, who had resigned after several scandals, and he was made to go. But Truss has been fighting for her political survival in office since mid-September, after she triggered a fiasco on the financial markets with her tax cuts plans and felt compelled to make a U-turn. Dissatisfaction with and resistance to her grew in her party. And according to the polls, the Conservatives are about 30 percentage points behind the opposition Labour Party. And at the research institute YouGov, Truss is the most unpopular head of government since the surveys ever began. You must imagine that even Boris didn't do that. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.